as we have seen in the yesterday's class, the introduction part only, that is what is Selenium and just the introduction to the history of Selenium, that is where like how it evolved and where it is going right now in the market. All right, okay, and then I also discussed how can you install, how can you download Visual Studio on your system, and I hope that everybody might have installed Visual Studio on their system. Alright, so now let's start with the C sharp. Now, how to start with the C sharp? As yesterday also I discussed that I assume that everybody knows the concepts, just the basic concepts of any programming language. It's not about C sharp, any programming language, I assume. Alright. Okay, now first of all, in order to go with the C sharp, we should have Visual Studio installed on our system. So I have this Visual Studio. I'll open up my Visual Studio. Fine. So this is the starting page of the Visual Studio, and then let me just create a new project. So I go to the File menu, New, and then we create a project. Okay. Alright, so under Visual C Sharp, you will create console application.NET framework. Alright, and then as you can see that, just a minute guys. Okay, now as you can see in this new project dialog window, we have so many kinds of projects. If you want to create a blank application for the Windows, we can create that. If you want to create a Windows form application, then ASP.NET web application, class library project. Alright, so you have so many options which type of an application, which type of a project you want to create. So according to your requirement, you can create your project. And then in our examples in our class, we will be creating two kinds of projects, that is the console application and a class library project, and we'll be discussing these two projects only. Alright, okay, and these two projects only are mainly used in most of the scenarios for the C sharp. Alright, so let me create a console application and then we'll discuss about class library project as well. So I create a console application, that is, say suppose it is my say basic program, and we'll give a logical name to our project. Okay, so this is your project basic program, which contains 4 files, or you can say 4 folders in it. Now what are these files? And then as we can see that this is our program.cs class file. Now in your Visual Studio project, in a console application project, you can create as many number of class files. Say suppose if you want to add a new class file, then you right click on the name of the project, that is we right click on it, and then I have an option, add new item. Okay, and new item dialog window opens up, which asks you to create which type of an item you want to actually add in your project. Alright, so if you want to add a class, you can add a class. If you want to add an interface, user control, alright, if you want to add the configuration file, then you can add the configuration file. So you can just have a look at this dialog window, and according to your requirement, what is your requirement in the project, that type of an item you can simply add in your project. Alright, say suppose I have to add a new class file. So I add a new class file and we will give a logical name to our class file as well. Okay, that is say this is my first class, and make sure that in the class file you have no space plus no number as well, no digit. Okay, alright, and if you give the first letter of the class name as a capital letter, then it will be more readable, it will be easy to read. Alright, so it's just it is just that it will be more readable to you. So you can just give the first letter of the class as the capital name, and make sure that you don't have any space, a blank space or any digit in the class name. Alright, so I add a new class and you can see that the class file has been added. Now what do you mean by a class? What do I mean by a class? Now C sharp class means a simple C sharp file only with the CS extension, .cs extension, that is this is your class file which has the CS extension. also known as the C# class file. Alright, so .cs is the extension for every C# file. If you will be adding a C# class file, then every class file will be having this .cs as the extension. Alright, now if I look at this class, you can see that I have a class, first class, followed by the curly braces. Curly braces opening, and in the end it is closing as well. Alright, and then we have something known as the namespace. Now what do you mean by a namespace? Have some patience. We will discuss what is the namespace, okay, how do you create the object, and what are these using system, using these all these classes. We'll just discuss these all, and then if I go to my program.cs class file. Now program.cs class file is the by default class file that is created when you create any console application project. Alright, and inside this class file we have one static keyword, then we have a void keyword. Alright, so just have patience, we'll be discussing each and everything as we go with our course. In the coming classes we'll be just discussing all these topics. Alright, some things might be confusing to you that I'm not able to understand. Just have patience, we will discuss everything. Alright, okay. Now inside this main function. Now main function, this is your function with a function known as the main function. Now in this main function, what is this main function? A function in which the control comes for the first time. Alright, so in the main function, the control comes for the first time, wherein, say suppose if you have to print anything, you will be writing your logic inside the main function. We all know that we actually write the logic in the functions only, and functions are created under the class. Okay, so under the class we have a function, a main function in which the control comes for the first time, and out here, say suppose I have to print anything. So in Java you write system.out.println to print anything on the screen, right? Similarly in C# we have a command that is console dot write line. Okay, and out here I print anything, say learning Selenium C#. Alright, so we have console.writeLine, and inside it, in the double quotes, you write your statement what you want to print. Okay, so now if you want to execute, if you want to see the execution of this command, so how will you run your code? We have this start button out here, right? I simply click on this start button, and then we'll see the execution. Okay, so you saw that a black screen did come up, but it vanished away so very fast. Now why is it so? In that is the console output window, the black screen that came up, but it vanished away as well. Now what is the reason for that? Say suppose I add one more line to my code, that is console dot read key. I add one more line, and then now I run it again. Okay, so now you see that this is your console output window, and we can see the output as well. This window is still. Okay, so what is then this console.read key? Console.read key is the command to read the output, to freeze the output. Unless and until you don't close it by your end, it will not be closed. Okay, so console.read key in a console application project. If you are working on a console application project, make sure that you write console.read key as well in the end, so as to read the output. Otherwise, you'll not be able to read the output, and you will be confused that where am I going wrong? Why am I not getting the output in my project? Okay, so we have this statement learning Selenium C# out here printed. Okay, so in order to print anything, we have console.writeLine. Okay, and these are all the inbuilt classes only, inbuilt keywords only that come out with the C# classes only. Alright, say suppose if I make this console, if I make C as small for the console. Okay, and then now you see that the error has started coming up below the console keyword. Okay, so these are all the inbuilt things only, inbuilt classes that we are just making use of. Alright, okay, so this is your console dot write line. Fine, and then say like console.writeLine is the command to write anything in the project. Similarly, that is, if you, the shortcut for it is you write CW and press double tab key. So then the console.writeLine, the command will be coming up automatically. Alright, so this is the shortcut, that is you write CW and press double tab key. Okay, and then whatever you want to print, it has to be in the double quotes. Make sure that it has to be in the double quotes unless and until it is a number. Alright, if you're writing the letters, you have to write in double quotes, otherwise you will get the error. Say suppose if I don't give double quotes, so you see that you have started getting the error in the statement. It says that the name learning does not exist in the current context, Selenium does not exist in the current context. Alright, so we have to write the code in the double quotes, the statement that we want to print. Alright, now say suppose I write something like I say first line, then I print another line as say second line. Okay, and then I have one more line with me. Say third line. I have these four statements printed. Okay, so now I execute my code. So you can see the output, that is first line, second line, third line, all are printed in the new lines. Okay, we can see that every line has been printed in a new line. Okay, so what is this console.writeLine does is it prints something that we are writing inside it. Plus the second thing that it does is it will move the cursor to the new line. When you say console.writeLine, so it will print the output that you are trying to print, plus it will move the cursor to the next line. So then the next statement will be printed in the new line. Had I been given something like this, say console dot write. Say suppose if I write console dot write, and now if I write fourth line, okay, and then now if I execute my code, okay, hold on. Yeah, okay, this is, now I say that, okay, I say suppose print something, say console dot write, and then I print one more line, say fifth line. Okay, and then now I execute. So now you see that fourth line and fifth line are in the same line, because in the fourth line I say console dot write. I simply write console dot write. So that means it will only print the output. It will not move the cursor to the new line. Since I told you write line is the command to move the cursor to the new line. It does two things. It prints the output, plus it moves the cursor to the next line as well. But then if you are saying console.write, it simply will print the output only. It does not move the cursor to the next line. So then the next statement is printed in the same line. Right. So this is what is the difference between console.writeLine and console.write. That is the main motive is to print anything on the screen only. But write line and write, it just moves the cursor to the next line, and write, it is the cursor is there on the same line itself. Alright, okay. Now coming to our project. Out here we have this project which contains, by default it contains 4 files, that is one properties, references, that is one class file program.cs, and one app.config file. Right. Yes, anybody wants to ask?
Anjan, this is Giri. Could you please explain what exactly app config will usually will set the properties, whatever? Just a brief elaborate, just one by one, what exactly what is
Yes,
used for that, this.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I am discussing that only, these four files after this.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
because those are very important. App config.
yes, yes. I am discussing. I know. I'm discussing that only. Okay, so the first file is the properties file. Out here inside this properties file, we have one class file, assemblyinfo.cs class file. So if you open this class file, this is just the configuration, just the class file details only. That is, we don't have to go with this class file. We don't make it. We don't use this class file. Okay, so it's just containing the assembly version and whatever is required for the console application project. We will not make any changes in this class file. It's just the by default class file that comes with the console application project. Okay, so in the properties file you don't need to do anything and will not be making use of this as well. It is not used. Okay, fine. And then comes the references folder. So references folder, I'll just we'll be discussing this after this app.config file. Okay. Now app.config file, if you open this app.config file, out here it is like this configuration file is containing your .NET framework. Just the configuration details of the .NET, the Visual Studio .NET framework. So I have this Visual Studio 2017, okay, which comes under the 4.6 version. Alright, so if you have installed in 2012 or 2015, then that comes under 3.5 or 4.0. So every Visual Studio version is having different framework version accordingly. Alright, so inside this app.config file, what you will be keeping is, inside this configuration file, we will be keeping the path of such files that you think might, like, inside our project, when we will be discussing the project, when we will be building the project, we will be having some XPath written over there. We'll be writing some path, like if we are reading the data from the Excel file, then we'll have to keep the path as well. Where is the Excel file located? Alright, so that path we will be actually keeping inside our configuration file, so that tomorrow if something changes, you don't need to search for the path in your entire project. You will be just looking in this configuration file, and then from here only we'll be reading the path and we'll be making the changes as well. So in the configuration file is very important. Alright, inside this configuration file only we'll be storing the path of the various files, the various files, or XPath also we can store it over here. All right, and yes, like as we go with our course, as in the coming classes you'll come to know, you'll understand it in a more better way when we will try to implement this configuration file. All right, as of now just make sure that app.config file is very important, and inside this configuration file only we'll be storing all our XPath, or the path of the various files. All right, so these all will be keeping in the configuration file. Yes, Giri, understood?
Yeah, one more thing. What exactly, apart from that, whatever external files location will mention, is there any environment variable also you can include here?
Yes, yes, environment variable also. No, if you have to set the environment variable, like environment variable is set for the system only, right?
Oh,
Environment variable we cannot set. Environment, how do you set the environment variable? Say suppose if you want to set the environment variable, then you go to the properties of your system, advanced system settings, and then we have the environment variable. So out here we will be setting the environment variable, right? So this is environment variable is for the system configuration, but for the
okay.
Visual Studio, in the app.config file we'll be keeping the things that is required in your Visual Studio project.
Oh, okay. Fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is your app.config file, and program.cs is the class file, by default class file that comes up, which contains the main method, which is actually which executes the control, which, right, we have seen that inside the main function only the actual execution happens. Okay. Now we have one more file, one more folder, that is the references folder. Now what is this references folder? Now out here, if you open this references folder, we have these classes, something classes. Now what are these? Now as I told you that in a console application, in any project you can add as many number of class files that you want to add. Say suppose if we, like we have seen, we added the first class .cs class file inside our project, and then out here also, if you want to print anything, if you want to write your entire your logic, you can just write it inside over here as well. Okay, now what developers do is that now in a console application project, we can add as many number of class files. Now in the practical world, what developers do is that they put all the classes in a single file called the DLL file. Okay, they put all the classes in a single file known as the DLL file. Now, for example, I can have a look at this references folder. Inside this references folder, we have these classes. These classes are actually the DLL files. Now, C# is the collection of DLL files. We have many inbuilt classes that we can use. For example, say suppose if I have this main function, inside this main function, say suppose if I want to print the current date and time. So what I will say, date time dot now. If I try to execute date time dot now and if I run my code, okay, so you see that it prints the current date and time out here. All right, 13th September 2017 and the time. So date time dot now is the command to print the current date and time. Okay, now out here, now from where is this current date and time coming? We have not written the logic to write the date, to print the date, the current date and time. We are just making use of the date time class. So from where is this date time class coming? Say suppose if I just comment this using system, okay, then you see that you have started getting the error in your code below this console keyword, below this date time class as well. So that means that these classes, these, and from where are these classes coming? These are actually coming from these DLL files that are added by default in your console application project. That is the basic thing, like console is date time, just the basic things that will be required by every project. So those DLL files are automatically added under the references folder in any project. Okay, so namespace, what do you mean by namespace? Namespace is the collection of class files. All right, so these using system.collections.generic, these are all the namespaces that you have to add if you want to make use of these classes, console.writeLine or whatever it is, if it is date time or all these, and then we will be seeing some more classes as well as we go with our course. So these all classes are actually coming inside these namespaces that are there, that are automatically present as of now, and then yes, some more classes also we will be making use of in the coming classes. All right, so this is what, yes Ashwini, what do you want to ask?
Just before you have in a right line, you write the something in the inverted commas. Okay, that will become a string for this method.
Yes.
Now this time you have written the date time dot now.
Yes.
Now I come to know this the right line. What kind of thing? What kind of parameter they
No, date time dot now. Just a minute. Giri, please mute your microphone. Yeah.
Are you getting my question? My question is, I want to know what kind of parameter this write line method can access. Just before it was accessing the string, now we are passing the date dot now also. So
yes.
How many things we can pass under the parenthesis? And how
You
I
can.
want to read that where it is available.
Yeah, you can pass any kind of a parameter inside the console.writeLine. That is inside. What is this console.writeLine command doing? It is just printing whatever you're trying to print. All right. So it's not something like that. Say suppose if I say I have date time. say current date is equal to I say datetime dot now. Okay, and then you can, if you want to print the current date, then you can print this as well. So this console dot write line, it can take any parameter. It can take the digit, it can take the number string. Yes.
Sorry, just hold. Just when we are hovering here, it's showing the 18 plus overload.
Console dot write line.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's overloaded something.
Y-
Showing it's overloaded.
Yes, 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 yes.
What's
So
that exactly? I want to know that.
yeah, yeah. You, I do.
Up to 19. Yeah, this one.
Yes, up to 19 parameters. Yes.
Okay, okay. So where I can see all these, like if I want to read what kind of things they can accept, like it's a long, sometimes object, sometimes string, and you need values
Yes.
and all. How
Yes.
I can read that?
You, like, if you want to read, you will have to read from the Visual Studio only, like how I am accessing this.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So you will be reading these parameters. You can just go through all these constructors of the write line from this Visual Studio, this IntelliSense that comes up when you write this console.write line. Or you can just Google out. It just the constructors of the write line. It will tell you.
So these are things which we can pass from this right line, correct?
Yes, yes. These are the things that you can pass. Alright, so this is known as, so, so what is this? Can anyone tell me what type of function you can say it is called as? Yes, Ashwini, you only told overloaded function. This is the function.
Different
Yes,
parameter we can accept this.
yes, yes. Very good. This is known as function overloading. Right line? Yeah, this is your function overloading. Same as same.
Based on their arguments, correct? If
Yes.
okay, I have
Okay.
one more question on this panel, on
Yeah.
this thing itself. So what
Yes.
does add to source control is for?
At the source control, I didn't get you.
Ma'am, this the downstairs, this the screen bottom line, you can see the blue line in there. Yes.
Yeah, item saved. Item
Add to
saved.
source control.
Add to source control. This.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, this will come under TFS. Right now, we are not going to do with this. Not going to go with this. This comes for the TFS. Okay, so if you want to integrate your project on the CFS, then we add the project to the source control. All right. So in the just have patience. We'll be discussing everything as I told you. This is just the beginning, right? So in the beginning, in the starting classes, we'll just discuss the basics only. Okay. Yeah. Fine. And then yes, in the Solution Explorer, your project details are listed. That is whatever you add in your project, the class files, any item, any kind of an item that you add are actually listed in this Solution Explorer window. All right. Okay, so we were discussing this references the concept of the DLL file, right? So I was saying that if you like, from where is this date time class coming? We haven't written the logic to print the date, the current date, but we are just making use of the date time class, right? Which is actually an inbuilt class in the C sharp that we are just making use of. We're just calling this class and then everything, and then we are printing the result. Similarly goes with the Selenium as well. If you have to work with the Selenium code, then we'll not write the entire logic. We'll be just adding the Selenium DLLs inside our references folder so that it will be easy for us to work with the Selenium code as well. Alright, say suppose if I just show you, if I go to the documentation of C Sharp, that is, you go to the website seleniumhq.org website, the official website for Selenium. So the very first line of the document says that Selenium automates browser. Right, that is, it is for automating the web applications only. You cannot automate desktop based applications with Selenium. Fine, and then you go to the downloads tab. Okay, and then over here, if you have to download the Selenium DLLs, then you can just download the Selenium DLLs from this website. Okay, that is, you just scroll down and out here for C Sharp, the current version that is there is 3.5.1. The current version will be listed in this documentation. And then you simply click on this download link and it will start downloading. Alright, and for the documentation, if you want to see the documentation for C#, here is the API docs link. We click on it and the Selenium documentation comes up. You can just have a look at the documentation. All the classes that are listed in the C# documentation, we can just add all these classes. Okay, we'll come to this topic as well. So Selenium.NET DLL is it's downloading. Okay, and then similarly you can just add the, if you want to work with the Selenium DLLs, then you can just add the Selenium DLLs as well in your project under the references folder. Alright, so okay, now the next thing is, this is your console application project that we added. Now whenever you compile your console application project or any C# application, any kind of a project, it creates an assembly whenever we compile. Now how do you compile? We go to the build menu. Out here at the top we have build menu. I click on this, then you say build solution. Okay, so your solution, it says build is 1 succeeded, 0 failed. So your build is succeeded. Okay, so that means your project has been compiled successfully. Now whenever we compile our project, it creates an assembly. What do you mean by an assembly? A file that contains the compiled code. Okay, now there are two types of assemblies. The first one is the executable. That has the, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but
Can you see my screen?
It's all green now.
Okay,
I could hear you, but I can't see your screen.
yeah. Just a minute. Still not visible? Hello? Oh,
We
God.
cannot see.
Okay. Just a minute, guys. I'll have to restart my system. Give me 5 minutes. concept of the DLL files, right? And then I told you that whenever we compile our console application project, an assembly is created, and then there are two types of assemblies. The first one is the executable having the .exe extension. Executable, what do you mean by executable files? The files that you can execute. Alright. Okay, that is, say suppose say I have this basic program as my console application project. Now if I right click on my project, I select open folder in file explorer. That is, it will be directed to the location where your project is saved in the system. Okay, so here is my basic program code, my console application project. I go to the bin debug folder, and out here you see there is one file, basic program.exe file. Okay, so I told you the first type of an assembly is the executable file having the .exe extension. That means this file is executable. Say suppose if I close my Visual Studio project, I have closed my Visual Studio project, and then say I want to run my basic program code. The logic that I have written in my project, I want to see the execution of that project without actually opening my Visual Studio project. Okay, so in that case you just redirect to the location of your project bin debug folder, and then we have one file .exe file. So if I double click this file, you see the output. Whatever you have written in your code, that code is printed. That logic, that all the things are printed in the console output window. Okay, so .exe files means those files are executable. You can just see the execution of the file if you want to see it later on without actually opening the Visual Studio project. Okay, so you just double click the exe file and then you'll be able to see the output. Alright, then the next type of an assembly, as I told you, there are two types of assemblies. Next type of an assembly is known as the DLL files. Now, what do you mean by DLL file? DLL file means the files which are not executable, having the .dll extension. That is, we'll just see. In that case, what type of a project we create is, we actually create a class library project. Right now we have created the console application project, right? So in the console application project you get the .exe as the file extension of the project. But now if I say create, just a minute, right? If I say create a class library project, okay, say I have one first class library project. I create this project. Okay, now out here you see that in the class library project we actually have three files: the properties, references folder, and the class1.cs class file. That is, this is your C# class file. And under the properties you again have the same CS, assembly info CS class file, and under the references we just have all the DLL files that are listed, that are same as of the console application project. Okay, and then we have one file, class1.cs class file. Now out here you see that this is having the namespace, that is, under the namespace we have a class named class1. Okay, but then inside this class file we don't have any main function. So I told you that main function is the point where actual execution starts. Alright, the control of the execution. Main actually controls the execution, the flow of the execution of your code. So since this class library project, it does not contain the main function, so how will it be executable? Right, so suppose we have nothing written over here. I compile my code. Okay, I compile my code and it says the build is succeeded. Now if I go to my folders path, I go to the bin folder, debug folder. So here you see that in a class library project you will have the file that will be created, will be having the .dll extension. Okay, .dll is the extension for the class library type of a project. So now if I close this, and then now if you try to execute, you will not be able to execute this type of a project. So DLL files. So the main point, the main difference between the .exe and the .dll files will be that .exe file, the files having the .exe extensions are the executable files. That means you can execute that file since it contains the main function inside it. Whereas since the DLL, the class library type of a project, it does not contain the main function, hence .dll files you cannot execute. Alright, so this is what is the main difference between the .exe and .exe file, as well as the console application type of a project and a class library type of a project. Alright, so suppose if I go to my basic program, my console application project, and then if you want to directly open your Visual Studio, the solution in the Visual Studio, you simply click on this .solution file. Okay, basic program, the project name, followed by the .solution file, the file having this extension. If I double click, then your project will be opened in the Visual Studio. Alright, this is opened in the Visual Studio. Fine. Okay, so if we look into our course content, so we have seen the first program, the basic program, and then yes, if you want to declare a variable, so how do you declare a variable in C#? That is, if I have to create an integer variable, then I have one data type, int data type, and then say int I is equal to say 10. So that means I have a variable, I variable of the type int, whose value is equal to 10. Okay, so suppose if you want to print the value of the integer variable I, so you print console.writeLine I. Okay, and then now if you execute, I click on the start button, and then you see that it has printed the value of the I, that is equal to 10. Okay, so out here we will not write this I in double quotes. If I write I in double quotes, then if I see the execution, it simply prints the letter I. Okay, so as I told you, if you have to print the exact statement like how it is, then you write the statement in the double quotes, or else if you're trying to if you're trying to print the value of any variable. Okay, so out here as well, if you want to print the value of the current date and time, so you'll simply pass the current date parameter, current date variable inside the console.writeLine. Will not write current date in the double quotes. Similarly goes with the I variable as well if you want to print the value of the I. Okay. Similarly, if I have to declare a string variable, then how will you declare a string variable? We have the data type as string. Say string x is equal to, you print anything that you want to print. So it will be printed accordingly, right? So if you simply, and then you simply call this x variable inside the console.writeLine command, and that string, the value of that string variable will be printed as it is. Okay, and then I assume that you know what are the for loops. Okay, then we have a while loop as well. Then what do you mean by if else statement? So that is also required, that also we'll be discussing. We will be actually making use of the if else statements as well in our code. Okay, then yes, the most important is functions. What do you mean by function, and how do you declare a function? This main is a function out here. Okay, so you must know what is a function, and then in the class, in all our classes, we'll be actually working with the functions only. But you must know that what is a function. Okay, and main is the function in which the control comes for the first time. Alright, then what is this static keyword? What is this void? That's everything we will discuss. Okay, so this is how case statements, I'm be using the if else statements only, not the switch statements. We'll be making use of the if else. No, we'll be just making use of the if else only in our class. Okay. The logic remains same. That is, you just have the switch, and then inside that we have the case statements. The syntax is same for C# for the switch statement as well. Okay. Yeah. Fine. And then the concept of DLLs as well, and then we have seen that is if you want to download the Selenium DLLs, then we just saw that you can just download the Selenium DLLs from the seleniumhq.org website. You go to the downloads tab, and out here for C# you can download the Selenium DLLs. That is, it might have been downloaded. I'll just look into my downloads folder. Yes, we can download from the Nugget package manager as well. Yes, Harold, I'll be telling you that also. Okay, so here you see that Selenium.NET 3.5.1, this zip file has been downloaded from the official website of Selenium, that is seleniumhq.org. So out here you will first of all have to extract your Selenium.NET folder. Okay, and has it been extracted? Okay, so this has been extracted. The two folders have come up, net35 and net40. I open the net40 folder, and then you will have 3 DLL files in this folder that you will be actually adding in your project, in your C# project, if you want to make use of these DLL files. Right? Say suppose out here inside this project I want to work with the Selenium code as well. So how will you add the Selenium DLLs inside your project that you have downloaded from the official website? And then yes, I told you that under the references folder only we actually add all our DLL files. Right? So I right click on my references folder, you say add reference, and then you browse to your location where you have downloaded your Selenium DLLs. That is there under the downloads folder. We have a folder named net40. Then out here these are the 3 DLL files, right? So I'll add all these DLL files. I click on OK, and then you see that these files, the 3 files have been added in your references folder. So now if you want to make use of the Selenium code, say suppose I have this first class, or else I'll rename this class file to say Selenium Basics. I rename it, and then inside it I'll create a function. I'll create a main function, public static void main. Since the execution comes in the main function only firstly, right? And out here, say now if you want to make use of the WebDriver code, the Selenium code, so we have a class for it. That is, say suppose if you want to initialize your Firefox browser, then how do you call your Firefox browser? You will simply have to create the object of the Firefox driver class, right? So I say new Firefox driver, and then for this Firefox driver we will have to import the class for it. That is, now how do you import the class for it? If you just hover your mouse to this Firefox driver class, you can see this down arrow, this yellow bulb, right? I click on this yellow bulb, and then we have a class that says that you need to add using openqa.selenium.firefox. So I simply add this. So it has been added at the top, and then now the error has also gone. Okay, so now you see that we just imported this class using openqa.selenium.firefox, and then we are just calling this Firefox driver class. And then we will be simply able to initialize our Firefox driver. Okay, so out here we are not writing the logic to open the Firefox browser at our end. We are just calling the inbuilt classes that are actually present under the Selenium DLLs. Okay, so this is how you configure the Selenium DLLs. And then one more thing, Selenium is not installed, it is configured. Okay, we haven't installed anything in order to work with the Selenium code. We just configured, we just added the DLLs from the official website or from wherever you add the DLLs. We are just adding, we are just making use of the Selenium DLLs inside our Visual Studio project, and then you can simply work with the Selenium code, the WebDriver code. Just a minute, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so this is how we configure the Selenium DLLs. And then yes, the first point, that is, firstly, if you want to add the Selenium DLLs, then we just saw how can we add from the official website of Selenium. Alright, so this is one way. Or else you can even download, you can even configure the Selenium DLL from the Nugget package manager as well. That is, as Harold told, that is, how do you add from the Nugget package manager? You simply right click on the references folder and then you have one option, manage Nugget packages. Right, I click on this manage Nugget packages, then the Nugget package manager window comes up and you will browse for the WebDriver DLLs. You simply browse for the WebDriver DLLs and then Selenium WebDriver DLLs. It will come up. You simply click on install and it will be installed in your Visual Studio project, in your respective project. Okay, and yes, if you are installing the Selenium DLLs, the WebDriver DLLs from the Nugget package manager, then just check the version as well. Like every time by default, the latest version will only be listed at the top. If you want to install the previous version, then that also you can simply install. Like as I told you, Selenium 2.53 is the most stable version up till now. Selenium 3 is having many bugs, right? And then we will see as well in the class if we face with any. But Selenium 2.53 is the most stable version up till now for the Selenium. Okay, so this is second way how you can add the Selenium DLLs in your Visual Studio project. Fine. So this is what it is. So we have seen how to we configure the Selenium DLLs and then a sample C# program, a sample C# Selenium code is, we just saw how can we initialize the Firefox. And no, this is if you are working with the Selenium 2.53 DLLs, then if you directly call the Firefox driver class, it will simply initialize the Firefox browser. But if you are working with the Selenium 3 DLLs, then we have some standard piece of code, 3 lines of code that we use to write in order to initialize the Firefox browser. Yes,
Hello.
yes, yes.
Firefox, which version we need to install? Is there any like compatible issue or like latest one, or which version you need to install Firefox driver?
I'm telling you that.
Firefox browser, I'm asking.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. Okay. Yes, Giri, please mute your microphone. Okay. Now, yes. Now, since right now we have added the Selenium 3 DLLs. Okay. So, if you are working with Selenium 3, then Firefox latest will work. The latest version of the Firefox will work properly with the Selenium 3 DLLs. Alright, or else if you are working with Selenium 2.53, which is the most stable version, which is mostly used, then make sure that you have the Firefox 37 or up till 40 you can use. 37 to 40 Firefox version will only work with Selenium 2.53. Okay, so please verify the Firefox and the Selenium versions carefully, because if you are not working with the proper versions of the Selenium and the corresponding Firefox version, then you will not be able to execute your Selenium code. Okay, so this is one thing, and many issues come up with these versions only. Many doubts come to us that we are not able to execute our code, and if we check their versions, there is some problem with their versions only. So either the Selenium, if they are using Selenium 2.53 and then their Firefox is the latest version, so then they are not able to execute the code. Okay, so please note the respective versions with the Selenium version as well. Yes, Ashwini.
Yes, do we have any like forum or any site where we can check all what kind of version of Selenium is supporting what kind of
Well, I told you for Selenium, with the Selenium versions, Firefox, this version is compatible. Okay.
IE8 and Chrome and
Chrome. Well, for the Chrome and IE, there is no versioning problem. There is no versioning compatibility with the Selenium versions. It's only for the Firefox only. And you can ask me. I have shared with you my email ID. You can just email me. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Okay. Yes, Harold was asking something. Firebug no longer working. Yes, Harold. Firebug Firebug is not working in the latest version of the Firefox. The latest version, that is 55 version, it's not working with that. You can skip to the previous version if you want to work with the Selenium 3 version. That is in the 50 range or else after 45 range, Selenium 3 is compatible for the Firefox. But in the current version, in the latest version, Firebug is not here. Okay, yes, Giri, you want to ask? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that at least next class onwards, I need some overview of like how the menus and what exactly debugging, how to like check the reports, how to results for Selenium, like overview of the menus, like whatever the here the menus is there, na, all the menus, how to be, debug it. I need that type of information. At least not going forward, not now today. Inside class.
Yes. Yeah, this is the first class only, the second class only as of now. And I told you can just have a look at the documentation. I shared with you this documentation link as well, right?
Yes.
So you can see in this documentation we are covering these topics. We will see how can we generate the reports as well, and how can you debug the code, how can you debug the frames if you have any kind of a frame in your application, if you have the pop-up handling. So these are topics we are covering in our class. You can just have a look at the documentation. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you see that some of the topic is missing, please let me know, and then I'll see if we can cover in the class, or else we'll take some extra class then for you.
Yeah.
Just have a look at this documentation. Yeah.
Saturday also we have online class or like only tomorrow?
No, it's only weekdays class till Friday, Monday to Friday, IST.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm just continuing with the class. I haven't stopped till yet. Okay. So yes. So yeah, so I was telling you the respective Firefox and the Selenium versions, right? And then yes, since we are right now working with the Selenium 3 DLLs, so if you are working with the Selenium 3 DLLs, then you just not directly call the Firefox driver like this, okay? But if you are working with the Selenium 2.53, Selenium 2.53, then you can directly call this Firefox driver class, initialize the object of this Firefox driver class, and it will simply initialize the Firefox. Alright, thank you, Harold. I have to go to office. Okay, Ashwini. Okay, so fine.
Because we need to go to office tomorrow, we'll continue if possible. Bye.
Okay, bye bye.